Don and James. I'm Don.
And I'm James.
All right, we're going to go over our reactions to the Australian Grand Prix, which is very fresh in our minds. The race just concluded yet just hours ago, really. We stayed up late to watch it here in the United States, and I don't know what you thought, James, but did not disappoint for a season opener.
Yeah, absolutely, man. The rain really, man, it threw a wrench, especially that intermittent rain really caused some people to really question their strategies and things that they were going to do. But it's been a chaotic just weekend, even leading up to the race itself.
Yeah, it was nuts. And yeah, the rain just like kind of almost undid everything that you might have predicted from FP1 all the way through qualifying. It was dry, and then and then that rain came in and just threw a wrench in everything. So yeah, it was wild, and it was very entertaining and very fun. And the rain, while it threw things for a loop, it did not ruin the competitiveness and just coming down the stretch there was excitement kind of all the way through. I mean, it was a lot of slow periods with the safety cars, but all in all, very entertaining race.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe just kind of as a refresher, so last year, Australia was third on the calendar. It wasn't the first race.
Right.
And last year, of course, Max started first on the grid. Whereas this year, he was, what did he start? Third, second,
Yep. Third.
third, started third. Got by Piastri at the very beginning of the race, which was exciting to see, especially in the rain. You know, everybody was slipping and sliding everywhere. Um, so I don't know. I think it was kind of interesting. Some people that I thought were having a rough weekend was, of course, Ollie Behrman. He of course crashed in qualifying. Didn't even I don't even think he made it around a full lap, or maybe it was his first push lap, and he just totally binned it coming around up to the front straightaway. And then same thing with Kimi Antonelli. He had sort of a rough qualifying as well. Started really low down on the grid, but he made it up. He made it all the way to fourth. I thought, what a fantastic drive. And of course, my that was my prediction that he would be the only driver to crash out during the race, and he was the only rookie that did not crash the whole weekend. So props to Kimi. I got that one totally wrong. I totally misread him.
Yeah, I think I texted you. I was in one of the practice sessions, I think, and he spun, but he didn't hit the wall. And I was like, "Oh man, James might have caught on to something here." But then he righted the ship. Behrman had a bad weekend. The only one who ended up with a worse weekend was Hadjar, and
Oh
he was
man.
doing great until the formation lap, and I felt so bad for the kid. Uh, for those that are wondering what I'm talking about, I guess they go out there. He qualified. What was he like, P7 or P8
He,
on the grid,
yeah, he was in the top 10.
and I don't know, the rain just caught him out in the formation lap, trying to put his foot in a little bit too much, going around a turn, and just hit the wall during the formation lap, and he was done before he ever even got started. And
Yeah, it was
so,
turn two. It was right at the beginning of the formation lap.
oh man, I get embarrassed for people, and I felt so embarrassed for him. He looked distraught, and then he eventually they showed some footage of him coming up to the pit wall later on in the broadcast, and he looked like he'd composed himself. So good for him. He'll have to get back on the horse
Yeah, and I
there.
also want to say about how Hamilton's dad went over to console him.
Yeah.
Had a sort of a real touching, almost like a father son moment. I thought that was a real
Hmm.
class act from Hamilton's dad.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He didn't have to do that. It's a competitor of his son, and he went over there. He must know, you know, how it feels, to have an embarrassing moment. But yeah, I thought all in all, I guess since we're on Hadjar here, I thought he was impressive throughout the weekend. That's sort of I'm guessing that was just an anomaly, and hopefully it doesn't get in his head. Hopefully people are telling him, "Listen, man, that was the rain. It wasn't you. This is your first time in a car going into a very first Grand Prix. The conditions turned on us. Forget it and move on. They it's kind of like football kickers that miss a big kick. They say they've got to have a short memory. You gotta you gotta have a short memory, I guess, with something like that. And if he keeps going and Racing Bulls keeps going the way that they did this weekend, they were looking good. And the rain really jumbled up the order, because I think it ended up hosing Sonoda as well, who was basically running P4 for a lot of the race, P4, P5, and then the strategy call near the end. I can't remember. Did he go off right near the end, Sonoda? And
his I made a note of it because it was so crazy. His so they neglected to put on the inters right away. He spun, and that pretty much ruined his race. They should have just gone on inters with everybody else.
That really bummed me out.
It was a bad call.
Because I had predicted that one of my bold predictions from last week was that Yuki was going to finish higher than his Australian result last year, which was P7, and I was like, yes, Yuki's proven me right here. And he basically, I'm looking at it as still kind of a good prediction, because he should have came in the top 5, but for his his strategist making that call, that seemed to be the most critical call of the race, is that last switch onto the inters, when to do that. I don't know if you think the same, but I mean, that if Lando hadn't gone when he did, he might not have been able to regain P1. And Max, he might have stolen the race had he gone on to the inters a lap earlier. So to me, that was about the most important call of the night, was that last switch onto the inters when it was raining down the end of the race.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned, Hadjar not getting caught up about, crashing. It was the rain, and he wasn't the only one that, suffered the effects of the rain, right? Like the rain caught out. I have a full list of it. So Jack Doohan got caught out. Carlos Sainz got caught out. Fernando Alonso had a bit. He just, misjudged where he was. I'm sure he was running something similar to that line that he was running, coming out of that quick little right left, and it just caught him out. Of course, Gabriel Bortoleto. It looks like he had a broken suspension, but it looks like it happened after he was already flipped back around. It's really hard to see. I'm going to go back and look at that one. But Liam Lawson also got cut off out of the rain. So more than a quarter of the whole field ended up having a DNF. It was a brutal race for everybody, not just Isaac.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. I thought it was really interesting. Of the 6 retirements, 4 were rookies. 1 was the oldest guy out there, Fernando. And then Sainz, there's no excuse for Sainz, like he's in his prime. And that was just a shame, and I was really looking forward to what Sainz was going to do. So, and the Williams was a good car. I mean, no doubt about it. So the Sainz retirement was the one that I'm like most bitter about. I was hoping to see what he could do.
Yeah, exactly. I felt the same. Of course, both Williams qualifying in the top 10 on the opening race. Got to represent the Williams. I was elated for that. And then, of course, Albon finishing in 5th. I think Williams had a really good run. I think had Sainz been able to continue the race, even though they were running pretty close together, I think they would have been able to make the strategy work. And I think they both would have ended up, sort of in the same place where Albon was. But I think if Sainz had been in the mix, it might have just pushed them up a little bit more, because Antonelli probably would have had to fight past Sainz first. And Sainz isn't one to give up easy. So I think that would have caused Antonelli a little more distress. And so Albon probably would have finished with that P4.
Yeah. And he almost snagged that P4 if not for the penalty being reversed. So I saw that they went back and reviewed the Antonelli unsafe release, I think it was. What I understood was that Mercedes appealed, got some other footage that they sent to the FIA that the FIA had not had when they made their initial decision to give him that unsafe release penalty. So that was interesting. I guess I naively thought the whole time that the FIA had access to all of the camera angles. Maybe that's maybe they don't, and maybe that's something they should change. I guess they got. I didn't know what this was. Some hoop camera or something that they had, and then they had it was like helicopter footage that showed that Antonelli did it. He had plenty of clearance both on the fast lane, but also with the pit crew. And so they decided to overturn it, and he went back to P4. So that, I mean, it's good for him for sure. And good for Mercedes to even try. Like sometimes I feel like those appeals are sort of futile, but they made it work.
Yeah, man. He had an amazing race, no doubt. I think he obviously the biggest mover, being knocked out, and of course Q1 during qualifying. So down in the bottom, quarter of the field, moving all the way up to the top quarter. So he had a fantastic race. His strategy really worked out for him. And, that aside, he's not a slouch. He's a very good driver. And he definitely showed it today, being the only rookie not caught out all weekend. So,
yeah, pretty good. I mean, I don't think he gets all the way up there without all the weird strategy changes that had to happen because of the rain. But you play the hand you're dealt in F1, and that's one of the reasons why we love the sport, right? Is like I remember when I first started watching this sport, and there was several people that talk about this, where it's like you just drive your hardest, even though you're in a car that's not great. You just drive your hardest and try to put yourself in position in case something happens, like somebody goes off, there's a crash, there's in this case, rain. And that was exactly what Antonelli did and benefited from it. Like the rain came in, shook everything up, and he was there to pick up the pieces. And that's what you have to do. It's not all that often that happens in F1, but it happens enough that, you benefit from it. And that was huge for Mercedes, because they ended up, even though McLaren won the race, again, with the Piastri spin out near the end, which I guess we could talk about here in a minute, it put him far enough down in the order, in the points, that Mercedes and McLaren are tied, for the constructors after the first race. So they both ended up with the same points haul, even though McLaren won the race, so pretty good for them to get that P4 and the P3, and yeah, kind of surprise everybody.
yeah, absolutely. Man, you talked about having a race ruined. Oscar Piastri. What a heartbreak for the Australian at his home race, no less. Uh, if you remember last week, I suggested that Piastri was going to finish first and Norris was going to finish second. And
Yeah.
they were on track to still have that 1-2 with, of course, Norris leading the race. But man, coming into that hard left, and he got it on the grass, and the grass, of course, being so slippery and him being on slicks, he just could not get that car in reverse off the grass. He was just spinning the tires. It was so heartbreaking. My heart broke a little more every single time a car went by him. It was so unbelievable. And they put a camera to his mom, and his mom's like freaking out too.
Right.
Oh man, you could just feel it. It was devastation.
Yeah, it was super disappointing, because I think the other thing we talked about last week was how I think I mentioned how I have heard the hype about home races so many times, and then a lot of times it doesn't pan out. And I will say that it was basically, made that little prediction come true, that sometimes home races just, there's nothing extraordinary about them. But I will say this, like, the fact that he didn't quit on the car and reversed it, like, he looked to me like he just threw it. He eventually got it in reverse where he was getting some grip, and he just went back. And like, I don't know how he could have even seen, there was cars coming around the corner there, and he backed out of the track. But when he didn't quit on it, because they actually on the broadcast put him as out temporarily because they
Yes.
thought he wasn't going to be able to get out of the grass. And when he got back onto the track, even though he was in like P12 or something like that, the crowd lost it. They thought they were impressed. And I mean, that never give up was pretty inspiring. So there was a good takeaway from it, I think, in that regard, that he got back out there. And then to get back into the points was also pretty good. And that saved them from falling
Yeah.
behind Mercedes. If he hadn't gotten the P9, they would have been behind Mercedes after the first race. So
Yeah, I will say, he had a tremendous recovery because I think when he came back out, he was 12th and he moved up 3 positions within just the last few laps to overcome and get back into the points. So he had a tremendous drive. But also, speaking of tremendous drives, I don't think anybody's talking about how Lance Stroll pulled out a P6 in the final position, scoring points for Aston Martin. How lucky is that?
well, so my last week, my bold predictions. Um, I predicted that Aston was going to be in the fight for P3, and of the predictions that I made, the people that I talked to about it, that was the most laughable one. And I now I'm a little disappointed that we didn't really get to see what else Fernando could do, because who knows, maybe they would have scored pretty good points there. If Stroll can do it, I'm sure that Alonso can do it. So, but yeah, I mean, Stroll, yeah, he deserves the credit for putting the car up there. P6 is a good result for Aston, and the only thing I think that really sucked was that Fernando hit the wall. Maybe there's a little bit of karma there. I couldn't tell, and I think I might have texted you about this, but I don't know that we have resolved this. Where Fernando crashed, was that the same place that he caused George to crash last
the
time?
exact same spot.
Yeah. The
He's come back from a year later.
Exactly. The universe, it does not forget, I guess. So, yeah, I was like, as they showed the replay from his visor cam, and I was like, I think that's where George crashed last year. I'm like, that was incredible. But yeah, I think I'm hoping that showed some promise for the Aston, but you never can be too sure in a wet race. Sometimes the rain just mixes up everything so much that you're not really getting a lot from the race. As far as like takeaways to make predictions going forward. I would say though that we must admit that McLaren's got the car. Like they in the wet, even in the dry, when before conditions changed. If there was any doubt in anybody's mind about McLaren's machinery, I think we should erase that. Like they were the fastest vehicle out there, and Oscar should have been P2 if not for the rain. That's what I took away from this thing.
Yeah, you talk about how dominant they are. So I mentioned that Max got ahead of Piastri in the first quick little 1-2 right there at the beginning. But just a few laps later, when Piastri got back ahead of Max, of course, Max running wide, leaving the door wide open on lap 17, they took off. Max was never able to recover. He just fell backwards. And then even I made a note on by lap 14, George Russell was already 6 seconds back from Piastri, who was running in third at the time. So of course, it is a wet race, so it is really hard to judge. But if this is any indication of just how dominant the Red Bull and the McLaren are above everybody, I think it's going to be just down to them for the remainder of the season.
Well, and I guess that was one other takeaway that I had, was that everybody's been confused or not sure what to say about Red Bull, but Max Verstappen is an animal. That guy, I mean, if the Red Bull is really an inferior machine, he was right up Lando's gearbox there. He that dude is a great driver, and you know, if I was Lando, I'd have been sweating bullets coming down those last 2 laps because he was right back there. And you know, it was rare that for him to make the mistake that he made that allowed Oscar to get back to P2. So he's not infallible, you know, but he is a great racing driver, and he he's so determined, competitive, and ruthless. Basically, I was over there, you know, as a McLaren fan. I was just hoping that Lando could hang on and that the pressure wouldn't cause him to hit a bit of gravel, touch the grass, you know, something that, and that is exactly what Max does to people. You know, he's just there. He's like in the mix. Now I've heard too that Lawson was not running the same spec car. I don't know if you heard that, but I was sort of sitting there going like, man, this is a huge discrepancy in talent or machinery, because Lawson was nowhere in the hunt, like basically the whole the whole weekend. So
Yeah, as far as opening races go, I think this one's going to go down in the history books as being one of the better opening races of a season. It was just so chaotic. Um, I think if I had to here's going to be one of my bold predictions. I think this is going to be a season where we're just going to see McLaren going back and forth, almost reminiscent of Hamilton and Nico Rosberg when they were both teammates. I think it's just going to be them two up at the front racing and fighting for the championship just amongst themselves. And kudos to Zach Brown there was part during the broadcast where they asked Zach Brown, like, oh, you know, are there going to be team orders? And he's like, the team orders are just let them race. Like, we're going to let them run and see how things go.
yeah, I mean, it, I'm hoping for a little bit of domination from McLaren, but I'm not necessarily counting on it that it'll be just the runaway for them in the constructors. We'll see. I mean, I was surprised at how quick Mercedes was, and I thought that the you know, bringing in Antonelli was gonna maybe negate some of the performance gains that they've had in the car, because he's a rookie and he'd maybe finish lower than they need to be competitive. But I mean, he surprised me in the end, and the strategists got him there. And so if that's going, I think, you know, it's maybe not even necessarily a Red Bull and McLaren and Ferrari, which I thought it might be a Ferrari and McLaren head to head for the season. I mean, Ferrari didn't really come to play. The rain got them a little bit too. I mean, Charles spun around and was like facing the wrong way on the track for a while. So, you know, maybe the rain had more of a factor. Ferrari did get the fastest pit stop. I noted that. I think that was in the report. So that's a good sign for them. And they didn't crash, so that's good. Both Charles and
they had a couple moments though.
Yeah, but yeah. So I don't know. What did you think about Ferrari's performance in the race?
It's really hard to say. Both of them ended up backwards at one point. So, and not at the same time, of course. Leclerc just looped it around at the same spot that Hamilton, I think, coming off that super fast left-right coming off the back. I don't want to call it a straightaway, but, you know, running back towards coming towards the front. So, it's hard to say. You know, Hamilton's still coming to grips with his new car. It's obviously going to drive different than what he's been used to for the majority of his career. So,
yeah.
But I don't know. They were still able to manage a decent finish, right? They both finished in the top 10, and they both started in the top 10. So the rain really caught just everybody out. I think if it had been more of a smoother race, I think we would have seen Leclerc advance more. because he did have a quick car. He was making advancements. I think within the first lap, he moved up. What was it, like like four positions? Just a crazy jump. So uh, it's hard to say. I think they got a lot more work to do, but I think they have a lot to show as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to count them out. Like I said, I think a lot of it was the rain, but they didn't, they weren't in the rain when they qualified, and they didn't particularly qualify where I thought they would, especially given that last year they took the race 1-2. So it was a bit of I would say a disappointment for Ferrari, but I definitely wouldn't count them out. I didn't like there was not a huge. I didn't feel like there was a huge step back for Hamilton. Like he's new in the car. It wasn't like Daniel Ricciardo going to another place, another constructor, and then he suddenly can't do anything. So I think that he will get the hang of the car quickly, like Lewis will. The other thing was another thing that I noticed, and I guess this is somewhat related, was did it seem like the drivers were a little bit irritated with their radio? Like it's the beginning, there was several drivers that were like snapping back at their engineers on the radio, like leave me alone, let me drive. I don't know if that's because of the rain and they just wanted to be able to focus or something, but you know, Lewis, who is typically pretty nice, he was like telling them like leave me alone, and I thought that was interesting. Maybe there was something there. I don't know.
Yeah, I did notice that as well. It's so I try to put myself in the mindset, right? Like, oh, I'm driving 200 miles an hour. It's raining. I got people like creeping up behind me. I got a guy in front of me. And then I've got my engineer telling me stuff, which I'm sure to him, to the engineers, it's totally relevant information and they just want to be
Yeah.
helpful, right? Because
Right.
they don't want to hinder the team. They're just trying to be, a force for good.
Yeah.
But then you have Hamilton saying stuff like, yeah, I'm well aware of that, guy. Just let me do it. And
Right.
in all fairness, he still has a lot of work on how he's going to communicate with the team and how the team's going to communicate with him.
Yeah.
So that's a little understandable. But for some of the other drivers, it's like, I think you just got to kind of play, just kind of, I don't know. I have the mindset like it doesn't cost anything to be nice. So they probably should have just gone like, yep, that's cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Like, and just like rub it off. That's how I would react to it. But I'm also not under the same pressure. So who knows
Yeah.
what it would be like.
Well, we've heard that kind of talk many times in the past. I mean, Kimi Räikkönen was famous for telling people to just let me drive. Uh, we've heard Yuki Tsunoda, like he'll snap. I seem to remember um, Mazepin, getting mad at Monaco, like let me. I'm just trying to keep this car on the track. Get out of my ears, like in. So I can't imagine like trying to process a lot of information, but then you hear others, that are out there like having like Lando, they were commenting about how calm he was. He's sitting there at P1 and he's having a full on conversation on the radio. So hopefully that's a sign that Lando's really settled into his skill level and, isn't, you know, or is able to focus on so many things at the same time. I know Max has had long conversations before. We have Fernando Alonso that like is noticing somebody passing somebody else by looking at the Jumbotron as he's going by. I'm like, how in the heck do these guys keep this kind of composure when they're going 200 miles an hour? And anyway, but yeah, I did think that there was a bit of so I think this might factor into why there was a bit of tension there too. Albert Park is, I guess I had never really fully paid attention to how challenging of a track it really is. There is some difficult turns at high speed, and there's gravel right next to the track and grass. And there's just, I started to really pay attention this year and noticed that, yeah, man, this is a tough track. So that rain on that track in particular, I think it's no wonder we saw 6 cars go out.
Yeah, it's not a lot of runoff area, is it? um, and so yeah, I could definitely see that. But to your point, Norris, being totally cool, calm, and collected. I think that's a very good reflection of how cohesive McLaren are as a team this year. If Lando's able to recognize, like, okay, he's telling me something, it's probably very important. And then, going backwards, vice versa. Lando, commenting on how he thinks the conditions are, how the car's feeling. That's all going to be relevant to how the engineers are going to respond, right? So I think them having cool, collected heads is a very good representation of how well they're going to do this season. And I think if the other teams can, find that cohesiveness, I think they'll see the same sort of results going forward.
Yeah, they seem to have their act together. I'll give you that for sure. McLaren does, and whether you like him or not, Zach Brown, I think, has really been a driving force in getting them where they want to be. And I don't know, I really like Zach Brown. Some people don't care for him, but to me, he's like I think he's a smart guy. I think he's a no nonsense leader when he has to be, but he seems like he's also interested in having fun, and this is a sport and it's entertainment. And so I don't know, I like him. I've heard him. I've heard him in some interviews. There's a really good series, if people aren't aware, called Beyond the Grid with Tom Clarkson, and he does extended interviews with all kinds of personalities from Formula One. And I listened to his interview, and I thought that was really good. You'll get some good insight into Zach Brown. I think Zach Brown has basically worked his way up from kind of a low level to being, the CEO, I guess, of McLaren Racing. So he's not really the team principal, but Andrea Stella also is another one who I think he's a good leader and good for the sport and good for their team. And I think he's the team principal of the F1 team, right? So I feel like Zach's like on camera and does a lot more things than Stella does. But yeah, I'm impressed.
Yeah, same. I really like Zach Brown. I've never had an issue with him. I don't know why people would have an issue with him. I know he's had not some so great successes, but now he's finding some great success with the team, and I really hope that success is going to carry over into 2026, and even just to the next race, China, of course, which I'm really looking forward to. I've always really liked the Chinese Grand Prix. I think it's a great track. It's got some great tight turns, but it's also got that super long straight, which creates some great passing opportunities coming around towards the front end. So,
yeah, I'm also excited about it. The big, like, I don't know what they call it, like it's like almost like a corkscrew, right? At the track, and
yeah,
I like stuff like that. I don't know why. I've always liked that. There's these interesting, you got to go slow and get around that, and it's like a big right. I think it's a right-hander that then snakes back to a left-hander that's like a hairpin. So anyway, yeah, I enjoy those too. But that long straight, there's a couple of good long straights on at the Chinese Grand Prix. Yeah, should be interesting. Is it next weekend, or do we have to wait 2 weekends? I didn't even pay attention.
It is next weekend. And maybe just kind of like a quick recap. So China was race number 5 last year in 2024. The top 5 finishing were Verstappen, Norris, Perez, Leclerc, and Sainz in the Ferrari, bringing that fight up. But I think it was important to note that where they started, Alonso started 3rd, but his strategy didn't really work out. But he did end up setting the fastest lap and did end up getting points that race. But I think the big talking point for last year was there was a mid-race yellow with Bottas retiring on the track due to an engine failure. And when they went back green on lap 26, before they even reached the green, they had that tight hairpin off the long back straight. And Stroll rear ends Daniel Ricciardo still technically under yellow, right? Because they haven't reached the green flag yet, forcing Ricciardo to retire. What a ginormous lapse in judgment from Stroll on that one.
Oh man, I forgot about that. But yeah, rear-ending somebody in general is rare. It seems like in Formula One, and except for maybe at like turn one at most tracks, right? You got everybody going hard into a particular corner right at the start, and everybody's bunched up. But under a safety car or under a yellow, I mean, like, come on, guy. That's inexcusable.
I really like Danny Rick. I never want to see him get taken out anywhere. So that was really heartbreaking, especially because he had to end his race, but Stroll continued to go on. So
yeah, that was kind of like what I'm talking about last week. I was mentioning how I hate that there's no justice for stuff like that, where if your race gets terminated by somebody else because they blew it and then they stay out there, that there's no way to exact justice there. I don't know what you do, but it's one of the things that drives me crazy sometimes in this sport.
yeah, it can be pretty cutthroat at times. Just a simple mistake from somebody else can end your day, and it's unfortunate. Which I guess it's better if it's somebody else's fault than your own fault, right?
And I think in the current regulations, it's frustrating from a financial perspective too, because they have to spend money to repair the car, and that cuts into their overall cost cap, if I'm not mistaken. And so it really has a big, impact. I feel like maybe in an instance where it's a clear cut, this team did this to me, the other team should have to pay for the repair or something like that, so that it's a little bit more fair, but who knows?
Yeah. Do you have any bold predictions going into China?
Oh boy. I was so focused on the the outcome of this last race. I didn't spend a lot of time prepping about China and thinking about bold predictions there. But I will say this: I think that we're going to see Ferrari on the podium. I don't know if that's a bold prediction, but I think I'm going to count it as one, given that they weren't anywhere near the podium in in round one. So Ferrari on the podium. I bet I'm going to guess it's probably Leclerc. And then another one that I might throw out there is that we're going to see an end to the streak of Pierre Gasly not costing Alpine any money for repairs. He went all of last season. He did not have any damage to his car that required a repair. I think we're going to see an end to that. He made it through the wet race in Australia and did pretty good, I might add. Kind of I think dropped out of the points near the end of the race, if I'm not mistaken. Did he score?
Yeah, he dropped down to 11th. Yeah, towards the end.
That was a disappointment, man. He should have scored some points. But anyway, he's gonna hit the wall at some point during the Shanghai weekend, and his streak will come to an end.
Oh man, that is a bold prediction.
He can't go on forever not causing any damage to that car.
I don't know. He made it through the rain, so we'll see. Narrowly made it through the rain, I might add.
Yeah. Anyway, I had to throw something out there, something bold. Ferrari on the podium wasn't probably very big. What do you got? What's your bold predictions?
Man, I'm gonna predict that only one Williams car will make it into the top 10 for qualifying, but both of them will find their way into the points for the finish. And the reason for that is because I think Kimi Antonelli and Liam Lawson were tragically out of place when it came to starting the race where they qualified at. And I think they're going to make up for it in China, which is going to shift things. And then I think Antonelli is going to outscore Russell coming into China. Like by the end of it, I think Antonelli will be ahead of him.
Man, you went pretty bold there. The Williams prediction, I was like, my initial reaction to that is man, this guy's a fan. He wants this Williams
I want it
to do
so
good.
bad.
Yeah, I think I'm excited. Like the next few races are really going to tell us about Williams, I think, and like because I'm on the cusp of thinking Williams is going to have a good midfield car, which is saying something since they were a back marker so frequently last year. I don't know if you remember this, but my bold prediction from last week was that Williams jumps from P9 in the constructors to P6, overtaking Haas and Alpine. So I think that they have the real chance to do that. I think their car looks significantly better, and if Sainz hadn't crashed, at the beginning of this race, I think they would have scored pretty good points. And so, yeah, I think you could be onto something there. I'm hoping that they both finish in the top 10 for qualifying and start off in the points and can defend points. So, but I like that one, even though I think you're kind of being a fanboy.
Yeah, for my season prediction that I made, I said Ferrari was going to finish third, and I think I may need to readjust that one and replace that one with Mercedes for the final season, for the end of the season results.
Yeah.
They didn't have a good showing, but maybe they'll pick it up towards the end. I know a lot of teams are already focusing on 2026, so we'll see how the season continues to play. It's still early. Everything is all to play for, right? We've only got one race under our belts.
We talked a lot about Antonelli, but George Russell, I have liked George Russell for a while, from his Williams days. And then I liked the move that they made to acquire him at Mercedes. And, I felt like even with the bad car that they had, he was giving it his all and not complaining. And I think it's paying off. And he looked confident and sharp yesterday. And so I don't know that Antonelli is going to beat him like your prediction says in for Shanghai, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he wins multiple races this year and podiums a lot. I mean, yeah, George is a talented driver, and I really want to see him succeed.
Yeah, he had sort of a quiet race, just silently moving his way up and and finishing on the podium.
Yeah.
He finished on the podium? Did I misspeak?
Yeah, no. He was
That's right, he did.
P3.
He did. Yeah, finished third. What a mighty drive for just kind of doing his own thing the whole race.
Yeah, he's got talent. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And I think the only reason that he didn't have better results in the past couple of years. I mean, I think he won maybe 2 races last year, but in the previous years to that, it was just the car. They couldn't get Porpoising under control. It just wasn't a good car design. And so, yeah, I think he's another one to keep our eye on this year. Before we move on or wrap or whatever we're at this point, we do need to bring up that Hulkenberg took P7.
Yes.
P7 last.
What a mighty drive for the Sauber.
I know. He just outscored their whole team's 2024 season by himself right there. I didn't have my eye on him at all. I thought that Sauber was going to just be either crash out or finish near the end of the timesheet. And for him to come in and not only score points but get a P7, I thought was incredible. So good for him. And maybe that's just the rain. It shook things up enough that it gave him an opportunity, but good for Hulk. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, man. It was good. Bortoletto, I kind of had high hopes for him. I thought he was going to do better. He had a decent qualifying, not really a really good start off in lap 1, but I still had high hopes for that guy. I really want him to do well. I want everybody to do well, but out of all the rookies, I really want him to knock it out of the park.
Yeah, yeah. Again, he fell victim to the rain. It looked like I think we were talking before about the what happened to his suspension. And yeah, it looked to me like he kind of got spun, and whatever it was when he was in mid spin, I think he kind of hit the curb, and then I think it was the rear right, just popped and broke, and then he was done. There was no pirouette chance after that suspension popped. So yeah, kind of too bad. And but yeah, I think this is going to be. I think he's got the chance to, you know, at least show what he can do a little bit. It's hard to know with that car. And I think as we get through a few races where the conditions stay the same, where it's not raining or whatever, we'll see if Sauber is still as bad as they've been. I was really disappointed in Haas. I mean, they just were obviously out of it, out of the chances to score points. Now they didn't crash, and neither of them crashed, but they were just at the back the whole time. So I don't know about that.
Yeah, I really hope they can, bring it around. Of course, being an American team and being American, I want to see an American team do well.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll just hold my hopes out for Cadillac.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to. I don't know what's going to happen with Haas. I don't know. I'm at least for a while they had Gunther, and he was fun to listen to, and now I'm not sure there's any reason to get excited about him. But
yeah, well, fair enough. I think that's everything that we wanted to touch on. Maybe just a quick news snippet that Red Bull is losing Jonathan Wheatley, who's going to go be the team principal for Kick Sauber. Of course, Jonathan Wheatley has been the Red Bull sporting director since 2006. So I think he's got a wealth of knowledge that he's going to bring to the team. And I hope it'll be good for the team, and continuing on the great result they've had this past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a ton about what some of these positions do, but it does seem to me that Red Bull's success has led to some of their higher level, manager types departing and getting work elsewhere and being poached, and so kudos to him, I guess. It's a promotion for him to go from sporting director to team principal. Hopefully, that's good for him, and hopefully he's able to bring a lot of that talent and whatever has driven success there to Sauber. Obviously, I don't know that he's going to make an immediate impact at Sauber because of their car, but once they switch to Audi and I'm sure that they're going to have a little influx of money. They'll, maybe it'll be a thing that has long-term impact, and they can stop clawing around the back of the grid and get up to at least scoring points. Of course, that means that if they start, going up higher, somebody else has to go down. So hopefully the Williams gets clear of that hurdle where they're not getting pushed down by the rise of other teams,
Yeah, Haas can keep that. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough. All right, Don. Thank you for meeting up with me again on this beautiful Sunday. And we'll talk to you again next week.
All right. Adios.
Later.